Hey folks, it's CitizenWolf here and welcome back to my humble podcast. Now, I'd like to extend my very humble apologies to the 3 or 4 people who took the time out of their very busy schedules to subscribe to my podcast, only to find that I haven't made any content for the best part of 12 months or so, even longer than that if I'm brutally honest with you. But I will be getting to that why, explaining my extended absence, if you like. For most of you will probably be new listeners anyway, so I will be reiterating what is the entire purpose of this podcast. I guess you can consider this like a take 2 or a reboot, if you like. I can't even remember what I said in episode 2, so that episode is non-canon, alright? That's my excuse to you guys. But anyway. Hey folks, this is CitizenWolf. Most of you probably know me from following me on Twitter making 3D Blender MLP artwork, or you might know me more from DeviantArt, or you might know me from Derpy Buru or Fair Affinity, or one of those sites anyway. And the original purpose of this podcast, if you like, originally at least anyway, was a means for me to document my experiences starting off as a 3D artist using Blender specifically, and making MLP 3D artwork as well, to be even more specific. And as a secondary function was also to maybe serve as like not as a tutorial as such, if you like, but more of a supplementary material or a reference point, if you like some of you might be coming to actually start in making your own 3D artwork, not just MLP artwork specifically, but 3D artwork in general, but you might not know where to start, or you might need some help tracking down materials, or you might need some advice, or those sorts of things basically. So I guess this is my way of for if you fit in any of those categories, or you just want something. Hopefully this is interesting to listen to. I can only hopefully it is. Depends how much I ramble on. But if you fit any of those categories, then maybe you might find this podcast useful or interesting. Really, it's my way of try to give something back from me learning from other people and taking resources in and actually putting some artwork together, basically. I don't have really much of a structure really as such. It's, as I say, in episode 1 I interviewed Hunter. Do check that out, by the way, if you haven't listened to that already. That episode is still available in the feed, where I interviewed him, because he was, I should start with him really, basically. He was basically one of the very first people I came into contact with on my journey, if you like, making 3D artwork, and I interviewed him, and it was a really good interview. And if you want to know more about his artwork and some of his opinions and stuff, do check out episode 1. So there's a little plug there. But anyway, so that's episode 1. This is episode 3. I can't even remember what I said in episode 2, so I might be reiterating a few things. So, but just, I guess you can consider this like episode 0, if you like, and count on from there. So I've got a few notes here, but I haven't got much of a structure as of yet. I think it's just a case of me, if I can think of anything off the top of my head that you guys might find useful. I don't want to ramble on too long, but maybe some questions and stuff at the end. I'm trying to fit some of those in as well. So, for people who might not know me, of course, I started off making 3D artwork. When did I first start? Around, this was before, just as this crazy pandemic was starting, back in around March 2020, when things started going awry for everybody, really. It was a very strange time for me, especially because I was furloughed from work. So basically, it means in the UK we had the government set up the furlough scheme where if you were kept on the payroll, I think it was up to 80% of the payroll. If the government will pay 80% of the wages if you keep that person on the payroll, but they weren't allowed to work while they're on the payroll, if that makes sense. So basically, I was furloughed for a good about 4.5 months, something like that. Very strange time. At the end, it was quite scary for a lot of people, because I was quite fortunate because they kept me on, of course, at the end of it. I'm back at work now, but that wasn't the case for everybody.
But
this is important. But I'm rambling on a little bit. But that's basic, because while I was on furlough, that's how I started off with Blender. Basically, I was at home doing nothing really, and I decided to, for whatever reason, take up Blender. As I was saying, Hunter is now one of my friends, a friend of mine. He was one of the very first people who I commissioned to actually make some 3D MLP artwork for me. And he made the artwork for me, and I really enjoyed it, and I thanked him for that and paid him for his works, of course. And that was at the time where, like, I was, I want to have a go at try and make my own 3D artwork. I did try to make my own artwork before then, back in like 2019. I tried to learn how to use Source Filmmaker, but for whatever reason I just couldn't get my a head around it, basically. So that idea, I sort of scrapped it, and I didn't really revisit it until the COVID outbreak happened. But I basically approached him, and he gave me a few pointers, like how to start. And I asked him loads and loads of questions back in the early days of how do I import characters, how do I pose them, how do I get the characters to do this and that, and all that, and what have you. And the culmination of that is I made my very first 3D artwork, and I put it onto Derpy Room. That was the very first art piece I did. It was the picture where I did Starlight and Trixie on the sofa, basically, with lights behind them and the clock above them. And that was my very first piece, and people seemed to really enjoyed it, and that was how basically it started. From that, and things like moved on from there. I did more advanced pieces after that. Did more advanced over the months and months. Doing different bits and pieces, and now I'm not basically more than 12 months into the game. I've made a few various bits and pieces, released a few models, did a few other bits and pieces in between that, and yeah, it's pretty crazy actually. But that's how I basically started. It was sort of on a whim thing, like a combination of like the pandemic and like the me going back to the desire of like me wanted to make my own 3D artwork, and not just necessarily MLP stuff, but that's what I started with, because I wanted to, instead of perhaps like maybe commission other people, I thought like maybe now I'm learning how to use the software, maybe I thought I'll give a crack at making my own stuff. And I have made my own few bits and pieces. I've made how many pieces? 12 or 13 pieces now. If you count the Canon piece, if you exclude all the unfinished projects and other scrap bits and pieces that I got rid of, I made them all on. I put them all onto Derpy Brew and other places, and I've got a small but dedicated following, which I'm really eternally thankful for, and which is pretty crazy. I'm still trying to get over that, but yeah. So I had a bit of a strange start with Blender. Really, it was sort of. I guess it was purely by chance, really. Had the pandemic never have happened, would I have learnt Blender? Maybe not. I really don't know on that one, to be brutally honest with you. It's certainly a huge contributing factor anyway. But that's the long and short of it. That's how I started learning 3D artwork. Of course, in terms of like tutorials and stuff, of course, while I can't remember. Did I do? I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. Like my head is cloudy. As I say, I haven't got very much in my notes. I'm just going off the top of my head here. I think I did the Starlight and Trixie picture first before I did any main tutorials, which is a bit weird. And I learnt Blender completely from scratch. I didn't have any prerequisite knowledge from other 3D software. Well, I well, not learnt really. It's about 15 years ago. I used to mess around with a program called Bryce. I think it was Bryce 4. It might have been Bryce 3. I think it was just mainly for landscapes and things. And another one was an earlier version of DAZ Studio. It's still ongoing. It's still a fairly popular bit of software these days. It's still free, I think it is. DAZ Studio, another 3D modelling program software. I used a very early version of that DAZ Studio I used to mess around with, but this I never took it really anywhere. I only messed around with it on my mum's laptop. This is going about probably 15 or so years ago now, so I can't remember which version it is, but I have vague recollections of messing around with that years and years ago, but again, I never really did anything until very, very recently. But Blender is I guess my first proper foray into make in 3D software and all that stuff. And in terms of MLP stuff, My Little Pony stuff, it's a lot of again, I'm really late on the game on that front. Really, a lot of people were around in the heyday of MLP, like that's probably around 2013, 2014, thereabouts, where Source Filmmaker was still very much a lot of people were experimenting with it, and that was the program that people using to make 3D artwork when it comes to MLP stuff specifically. It's still the predominant bit of software in that community at the moment, but Blend is starting to swing towards Blender's favour, but I will talk about that a little bit later on. But Source Filmmaker, I never learned how to use that. I've tried to learn how to use that. But again, that is the point where I'm doing this podcast in the first place. At the time, I just didn't know what to do, where to start. Like, what tutorial did I do, or who do I ask? Like, if I want to make MLP stuff with SFM, what do I do? Who do I talk to? I just didn't have anyone to talk to. I didn't know who to get in contact with, or which tutorials to watch and stuff, because it was sort of. It's kind of a niche thing. It's easy if you know how, as that old adage goes, I suppose. 3D's easy, well, with a big asterisk on it. 3D's easy if you know how, and I think that can be said about a lot of things, really. But so SFM was sort of like this alien thing. I did try my best to try and learn how to use it, but I just couldn't get anywhere with it. So it's sort of that idea fell by the wayside, and when Blender became like when I was talking to Hunter about Blender and stuff, like he was explaining, that's the program he uses now to make his 3D artwork exclusively now. He was talking to me about what program, the intricacies of Blender, and like what you can do with it, and his favourite artists and things like that. And that was the part of the spark that got me interested in it, and actually putting the time into try and make my own bits and pieces, which I am now. So now I've gotten 12 months into it. I can hopefully try and relay some of my experiences to you guys for not just newcomers, but maybe people who are making artwork already, and then they maybe could relate to some of this stuff. Hopefully, anyway. So Blender was came around because of the pandemic. I did my first Trixie and Starlight artwork, and the very first bit of artwork I did. No, I'm getting that completely wrong. No, I've got it completely wrong again. It can't be, because the first tutorial I followed on YouTube was Blender Guru's donut tutorial, and now it's sort of become like a bit of a meme, I suppose, in the Blender community, or the 3D artwork community in general, really, where it's basically got its own subreddit that so many people cut their teeth with Blender, like following Blender Guru's tutorial, where you make a coffee cup and a donut and you make it animate and stuff. So that was the very first one I followed all the way through, made my own donut, did the render, and then once I did that render, I put that in my Trixie and Starlight artwork as a nice little nod to myself, I suppose. So yeah, I'm getting that's the correct chronology now. I did the donut tutorial first, then I did the Starlight one after that. Yes, I've still got the original blend file. I keep everything that I make, so I can still go back to that and re-render it if I want to. But it looks a bit rough, to be brutally honest, the donut. But as I say, that's the every person's first bit of artwork is a bit rough, I suppose. Same with that Starlight and Trixie piece. The lighting, it's looking back at my older pieces. Oh my goodness, a lot of it's terrible. To be brutally honest with you, some of my earlier artwork's all right, but that one's a bit rough. You can tell the posing's not great. Like the posing on the Trixie's ankle, I think, is what looks a bit weird, and the lighting's flat, and I had a nasty habit of reusing that same stupid brick wall texture. You probably know that by now if you follow my artwork. So I've got that was my go-to wall texture for quite a while. But anyway, it was it's one of those things, really. So that was the very first tutorial that I followed myself, the Blender Guru tutorial. I've done several tutorials since then, so I think I can give you guys a decent overview of some of the good ones you can follow. I've got the Blender Donut tutorial is a good one, but as I say, not many people find that appealing because it is quite a lengthy tutorial, and maybe you want more of a bite-sized one. The three main ones I've done, I can't remember exact order of which I did them, to be brutally honest, but I did the Blender Donut tutorials, obviously. I also did another good one you can do is Grand Tabbit's Monster tutorial. That's another good one that runs through if you just want like a bite-sized tutorial, like learning how the UI works of the software, and that covers a basic bit of modelling and how to position items and things like that. That's a good one to start off with. It's a nice bite-sized tutorial to get yourself started. And another good one I did was by CG Boost, the Apple tutorial. That's another really good one that you can do. It's a bit more. It's more of an intermediate one in between the monster tutorial and the donut tutorial in terms of length and complexity. So that's a nice intermediate one to do, where you make a basket of apples and you model the apples yourself, and you learn a bit of lighting, how to use lighting, and how to model a few bits and pieces. That's another really good one to start off with. So those three ones are really good ones to do. But as I say, it depending on how much time that you have or you have available. Probably the Apple or the Monster tutorials are the two ones I tend to go for, and I think they're a bit more modern. They refer to a more recent version of Blender. Then Blender Guru's tutorial is still relevant now at the moment, but like I struggled a little bit when I was doing it because Blender was updated a few times in the interim, and a few of the buttons I seem to remember a few of the functions had moved about somewhere or didn't work as they did before in the version he was using for the tutorial. So I had a few snags with that one, but like I did get to the end, and like I did learn quite a lot. And I do recommend people, if you're brand new to Blender, definitely don't just do one tutorial. Do a few, because basically every person's got like a different teaching style, and you might pick up things from like another person that say that you won't from another person, and vice versa. Like I picked up something different from each of those three Blender tutorials, or something that like maybe wasn't explained or didn't sink in the first time, but when I did it again, when it was reiterated to me again in a different way by a different teacher, then I know what he meant by that other guy meant by scaling like along a axis or whatever the thing was I was trying to learn. So I do recommend doing that anyway if you're brand new to the whole Blender getup. Let me just take a drink. I do apologise. Throat is absolutely bone dry, so we'll be doing that quite frequently, I think. But anyway, it's so yeah, it's one of those things. That's what I do recommend. So not just for learning MLP 3D artwork. That's another pitfall that some people like. If you specifically want to learn how to make 3D MLP artwork, like where do you start? Again, this stuff isn't covered by like YouTube tutorials. So if you are brand new to Blender or 3D modeling in general, do a few tutorials first of all. So if you gotta learn how to walk before you can run, basically. Not that I'm saying I know how to use Blender brilliantly. I've learned quite a lot. I will iterate that, but there's still so much more I need to learn, or there's a lot of things I don't even know how to do, like stuff like animation and other bits and pieces. Like there's loads of things I want to learn or improve on. So learning the fundamentals is a very good thing to do, like learning how the basic shortcuts, like where things are, what the buttons do, like what certain keyboard shortcuts do, how to do, for example, how to move an object, how to import an object, how to rotate things, how to scale things, basic things like that, how to manipulate vertices and things like that. Learning how to do that first of all puts you in excellent stead, because at least you've got a very basic grasp of where things are and what the different interfaces do, if you know what I mean. Like one's for texturing, one's for modelling, another one's for animation, another one's for scripting and what have you. But yeah, that sort of thing. So I think a lot of people sort of it's understandable. Like a lot of I found like a lot of a pitfall that a lot of people tend to fall in is they try to do too much in such a short amount of time, and I'm guilty of that as well. Like they try to do something way too complicated that they're not really capable of knowing how to go about it, if that makes sense. Like how to, like doing some like a complicated scene with some characters, but you don't really know how to rotate things. Like you're gonna struggle if you don't know where like the half of the functions are in the software. So learn a few tutorials before you even start making MLP stuff. That's a very good thing to do, or just any kind of artwork, but not just MLP artwork. But if you're interested in MLP stuff specifically, once you've done a few tutorials, then you know the basics of what you can do. Like, okay, right, I want to do a character with, like, I don't know, Twilight Sparkle or something like that. You want, like, oh, I know how to import the character now. You go into Append, find the character model that you've got, import the character, and there you are. You start off with your character, and then, like, you probably want to import a few more characters, and then import a few more assets, and there we go, and you start building the idea from there, or whatever you want to do. So I use Next Gen. Next Gen's probably the easiest to grapple with compared to Revamped. Revamped is also very good, but the big downfall with that one is it doesn't have IK rigs. It doesn't have inverse kinetic rigs set up. So that's something I haven't even touched myself again. So I haven't really dabbled with Revamped all that much. I'm tempted to be sticking with Next Gen for the time being, because I'm still getting to grips with like those models and how to pose the characters, because with Next Gen the characters are practically already pre-built for you. Just import the character, pick your main that you want, if you import the extra mains that you want if you want to swap them out, and then the character models have already got the pose, the rig already set up, so they're ready to pose. You just select the pose part of the character, and then you can do whatever you want with them, basically. As I say, it's quite fun to use. They're not perfect, as I say, but hopefully some of the bugs will be ironed out in version 14 or something like that, I think it is. The only gripe I have with Next Gen is I think the Blender version's a bit neglected, because it was predominantly for Source Filmmaker. Again, you can import Source Filmmaker assets into Blender, but that again, if you don't know how to do some at least basic conversions or importing, you're going to struggle. So that's my main criticism, I suppose. The Blender version's a bit overlooked, and I think they're putting a bit too much time into Source Filmmaker, when in my personal opinion probably Source Filmmaker, you might want to like start shifting efforts away from that dated software and move on to Blender. But anyway, we'll get to that. That's another topic entirely. Again, this is the par and parcel for the course. Like I ramble all the time in these bloody podcasts. Again, I will try to improve in later episodes when I get around to recording more of these. Hopefully with some other guests as well. So we'll get to that. So I started off with Blender back in 2020. I'm still learning how to use the software myself. I've made quite several pieces since then. I've modelled a few other bits and pieces. Another thing probably can be quite difficult is, I suppose, for me anyway, talking from personal experience, it's one of those things where there's no, I guess not like in like college or school or whatever, where like the school or the district has set you a curriculum, if you like, you must do maths, you must do science, you must do English, whatever it is, and they give you a set of instructions to follow. It's with Blender, there's no, or 3D modeling in general, there's no like curriculum basically to follow really. So it, like, knowing where to start can be quite tricky. That's part of the problem I had with Source Filmmaker. I just didn't know where to start or what to do first, or what was important, what was not important. That's probably part of the reason why I sort of scrapped that idea and just went to Blender instead, because I think Blender, there was more resources available and it was more accessible. So that's a lot of the people find it quite difficult, like not knowing where to start. But again, doing a few good basic tutorials, any of those three I recommend. The ones I've tried are good ones to start off with. Start off with a really good few tutorials, do 2 or 3, and then from there you've got some more options to play with, and then you've got a bigger skill set to play with, and like knowing how to better approach like the idea that you've got in your head, like making a bit of art or an animation or what have you. So that can be quite tricky. Like not having a curriculum as such to follow can be quite tricky. So do a bunch of the advantage of like having a lot of tutorials on YouTube is a lot of the really good ones are completely free. So all it requires from you is a time investment to actually follow them through. And there's some really the ones I've covered, like they end up with a nice bit of artwork at the end of it, so you can use to show yourself, oh, I've actually improved. You know what I mean? So which is awesome. So having a tangible goal to work with in the early stages is a very good thing to do. Speaking from my personal experience, anyway. And there's of course there's always loads of things that I wish I'd done differently in the early days. Like again, this is a bit of a meme at this point, I suppose. Like where I the Starlight and Trixie piece, going back to that once again, my very first proper piece. They're a nude for a reason, not because like nudity is fun. Of course, it's fun in artwork, of course. But I genuinely didn't know how to put clothing on the characters. I didn't know how to do it at the time. I know how to do it now, but at the time I just didn't know what the hell to do. I didn't know what modifier you did or how you import them or anything. I didn't know any of that at the time. So it's sort of it's still one of my highest rated pieces, even though I don't really like it so much. It's not as good as my later ones, if you ask me. It's probably not my favourite piece either, but it's like baby steps, as I say. I just wish I had a better, slightly better understanding of Blender itself before I actually did that. I can always go back and change it if I want, but again, it's like, I don't know. I don't feel like going back and doing a George Lucas on my older stuff. It's kind of like redundant at this stage. I'd rather move on to newer things with like improvements and do it that way. But some people like to do that, go back to their old artworks and I guess re-render them, improve them in different ways, which, you know, it can be a fun exercise every now and then. But maybe I'll do that at some point. But it's not really a priority right now. If I ever plan to do that, I don't know whether I will, but we'll see. Is all. I wouldn't say no entirely to that idea, but anyway, rambling once again. So start with a few good tutorials, and once you've done that, make a few pieces, and then get yourself started. So what else is another important thing to? A lot of this is quite a lot of personal stuff, but relaying my personal experiences and stuff, but hopefully it's still relevant anyway. I think one of the traps I fell into myself, especially in the early days, I'm still quite guilty of it now, to be honest. It's I guess like it's in the early days, like I was chasing likes basically. I wasn't really making artwork for myself that I found interesting, but more so making pieces in order to try and like get the most upvotes or most likes or new watchers to my artwork and stuff, and like which isn't really the proper way isn't the best way to do it, especially if you're doing it like as a hobby. But you might have different motivations if you're doing this professionally, or you're looking to earn a living out of this sort of thing, maybe, as some people do, like making artwork for Patreon or becoming a professional artist full time and what have you. I can only speak as a part-time artist who does this on the side, so I'm not going to be able to cover the whole spectrum, as it were. People are going to have different opinions. I will stress that, but as somebody who does this stuff on the side from time to time, I had a really hard time in the early days. I still do it every now and then, like being motivated, trying to chasing likes, and it's not good for your mental health, really. I'm going to stress that. It's not like when you make a piece of artwork that you're really proud of, and you only get 2 likes and not barely anyone, it gets largely ignored. So that's part and parcel of the course once again. So I always stress to people, I guess, especially if you're starting out, don't stress about that stuff at all, really. Try not to stress about all that stuff. As you find over time, as I found with myself over time, as I sort of I suppose let go of my inhibitions and decided to make my artwork that's more interesting to me, even if it's a bit more niche and not as many people like it for the themes I cover or what have you. I can tell my artwork is improving all the time. I'm getting better at the lighting. I'm making stuff I'm more interested in. I'm taking more care with posing the characters and the set pieces, and thinking about more of the background storytelling and stuff like that. As I'm making more and more pieces, all that stuff becomes more important, and chasing the likes and the acclaim, if you like, is not as important. Of course, you want people to like your stuff, of course, but now that I've sort of got the balance a bit better, I'm not perfect. I'm still making ish. I'm still having. I do struggle sometimes, to keep that in check from time to time. I will not doubt that. But now that I've got the balance a bit better, my artwork is now is improving, and I'm people who are interested in similar sort of things that I like in making MLP artwork and 3D artwork. People are coming to me and wanting to communicate with me, and from that I've made several friends, which I'm really thankful for. Friendships is another good thing. It's another relevant thing when you're starting out making 3D artwork. It's once you've got yourself established and you upload a few pieces that you really like, you'll find that people come to you after a while, and they'll start contacting you on their own accord and asking you for advice, and from there on then people become friends with you, and they share like-minded people who like similar artwork. You exchange feedback and become friends over Discord and what have you, and share expertise, and which I'm really thankful for. I'm in very fortunate position, from starting from Hunter again. He introduced me to his friend J-Dash, who works on the next gen project, making the next gen models and things. He introduced me to him because he was, when I was making some of my early artworks, he's saying that's the sort of material that that's the sort of artwork he likes, and I got into contact with him via Hunter, and now we talk quite regularly and we exchange feedback and that sort of thing. That, and I met other people through him, and it sort of snowballed from there. So finding a community, I guess, is another one of the really cool things of being a 3D artist. I think once you make a few pieces and people come to you for advice and want to become friends with you, and and that's how friendships start, basically, which is awesome. That's one of the upsides of it, making new friends, like-minded people who like similar artwork that you do, and take it from there, which is awesome. And J-Dash has furnished me with several assets to use in my artworks, and without him, a lot of my most recent works wouldn't have been possible without him. So I do talk to him on a regular basis, and through him I've met other people, like-minded people who like similar artwork as well, which is awesome. I will talk about some of the drawbacks, I guess. as a balancing sort of thing. It can be like, as I say, like when you're making 3D artwork, it's not all sunshine and roses. Is that the phrase, sunshine and roses? But yeah, you know what I mean. It's not all sunshine and roses. It's not all sunshine and bunnies or whatever it is all the time, basically. 'Cause there are a few drawbacks to being an artist, other than like I guess like in my personal experience, not everyone's going to have that problem, like trying to chase likes and stuff. That's a separate thing. You are. It isn't. I think it is inevitable where like you will get people asking you for free stuff. I think that's. I don't think you. I think that's a rite of passage, if you like. I think everyone's had like the odd, like several weirdos like a call asking for free stuff, or like other weirder requests I've had. But like I've had stuff asking me people ask like out of the blue, like can I have some free art? Like, no. I'd like for several reasons. One, I don't take commissions at the moment. Number two, who are you, and all sorts of things. And like you get that's just, you get all sorts of weird requests. I think like Ask Any Artist Worth Their Salt will have several stories like that, and I've come across like a few individuals, and like it's like a water cooler moment. Like everyone's come across like a weirdo, like asking for free stuff a lot, or maybe artwork ideas that you're maybe not comfortable making and stuff like that. I guess that's one of the main ones. But I've had a few of those, like people asking me for freebies and stuff, and like out of the blue, and like, or try to be manipulative. That's another one. Pleading poverty and asking for handouts and things like that. I've had that sort of stuff in the past, which is disappointing. But you learn how to scope those out, I suppose, and you get better at dealing with that sort of thing. So it is that is inevitable, unfortunately. But you do take precautions to protect yourself from those things, like maybe not only give out your contact information with people you've conversed with on a few occasions, or you feel that you can trust them. Again, that's another difficult thing to decipher in this day and age. A lot of people who is trustworthy these days, it's quite difficult to ascertain, but you've got to have your wits about you these days, making 3D art, where you can put yourself in situations where like they're forcing you to make artwork and all sorts of other horror stories. I'll probably cover them in like a later episode when maybe I can get some other people on the podcast and go through that more. But it's one of those par and parcels, really. I think it is. It's one of those things where you learn how to deal with after a certain amount of time, and you get better at that. So it does toughen you up. I've had people criticise my artwork and then coming back, say 12 months later, saying they want to do collaborations with me. I've had that before, and that was quite a cathartic moment. But I won't go into that anymore because, as I say, it's one of those things. But anyway, being an artist is great. There are ups, most of it for me anyway, is mostly ups, but there are a few downs. But best thing is to probably discuss it with your fellow peers and help you get through it. That's one of the best things to do. But anyway, I've made several pieces using Blender MLP 3D artwork. I've got a few more ideas that I'm planning to do. Don't know what they're going to be next, but I've always got a few other bits and pieces in the pipeline. I haven't got very much else to say, really. I've covered everything I want to cover in this podcast, really, I think, really. I've got a few other bits and pieces I could do. I've covered the ups and downs of being a podcast, ups and downs of being an artist. Another one, I guess, what is my opinion of using Blender over, say, something like Source Filmmaker? For me, I think, as I was saying, a Source Filmmaker in the MLP community, it's sort of like they came about at the same time, or they should say they became really popular at the same time. That's why there's a lot of intermingling between the two. Back in, say, about 2013, 2014, around that time, back in its heyday of both the show and Source Filmmaker. So that's where a lot of art and 3D animations were made using that software. But Source Filmmaker, being as it's now 2021, it's really showing its age. As I say, I had a lot of trouble personally, as I explained already, learning how to use the interface. I just didn't know where to start, and there was barely any materials for me to reference, and I didn't know how to use it. So it was quite obtuse from that point of view. And secondly, from a technical perspective, it's 32-bit software, which means it can only address 3.5 gigabytes of RAM memory, and in terms of 3D modeling or animation or art or anything like that, that's nothing. It's so you can easily hit that memory cap, and it's reportedly crashes frequently from what I've heard, and there's a lot of limitations where, if you want to do portrait pieces, you can't adjust the viewport like you can in Blender and all that other stuff. It's just very limited in what you can do, and people still make fantastic stuff with it, which I'm not trying to knock people who choose SFM over Blender, not at all. My big concern is it's sort of because of its limitations, and people are hitting those limitations regularly now. It's probably, my worry is it might be stifling creativity from a hardware perspective. There's a bunch of ideas that you just cannot do with Source Filmmaker because of the software just can't cope with what you're trying to do. If you're trying to do a scene with loads of characters, it just craps out on you, or just crashes, or you lose all your work and stuff. I heard horror stories like that all the time, but so that's where Blender has a load of massive advantages over that. Blender isn't perfect. There's a few, it can misbehave occasionally, but for the most part, it's pretty stable software. And it can be quite for people who jump in directly from SFM into Blender. Some people have said they've had a hard time trying to make the jump over to it for various reasons. But again, like with everything, it's a case of relearning the new workflow, if you like, and re-tapping into the previous knowledge that you had with Source Filmmaker, because a lot of that you can still use, like the idea of using cameras and using lighting and posing characters. All that stuff you can still use, but you just have to relearn how to re-implement those ideas and knowledge that you have with Blender, and it's totally doable. And when it comes to MLP stuff, because Blender is able to import Source Filmmaker assets, both levels and models and textures and stuff, with a few conversions here and there, you can basically still reuse a lot of those assets in your new artworks and reuse them in more interesting ways. And with stuff you can do with textures and stuff like that, it's amazing what you can do with it. For example, if you wanted to rechange a color palette on an item of clothing, you can't change that as easily as you can with Blender. You can't really do that with Source Filmmaker. You have to sort of stick with the texture that comes with that asset, whatever it is, be it a t-shirt or some trousers or some boots or whatever it is. But in Blender, for example, if I don't like a texture and I want to swap it with something else, I can just bring my own texture in and remap it and everything, and get the texture how I want it to look and stuff. And that's just one of the many things that you can do with it. And of course, you're not limited by it's 64-bit software, so you're not limited by RAM limitations. Well, you are still limited by RAM, of course, but you're not limited in the same way. You're not limited at a software level, if that makes sense. You're basically limited by how complex your scene you want it to be, or how powerful your computer is. So, in my case, in one of my early works, I think it's the Rarity and Fluttershy one. I did where she was tied to the chair. Rarity was tied to the chair with the cuffs. That one, the bunny picture I did. That's probably my favourite piece, actually. But anyway, I'm rambling again. In that piece, I basically went overboard with all the textures. Again, it's a learning process. I went overboard with all the textures and stuff, and it took up so much RAM and memory, so I ended up having to, by necessity, double the amount of RAM in my machine just to get the damn thing to work. So I ended up having I put an extra 16 gigs in there to make it 32, and For the most part, that served me well. I'm thinking about doubling it again, but I've learned how to be more frugal with textures and stuff, and not go crazy with like 4K, ultra high res stuff. Because in most cases you don't need them that high. The high res textures, you don't need them that high. Because like the higher the res the textures, the more memory you use, and the more memory you use, the slower the software gets, and the slower it gets, the more likelihood it's going to crash, and so on and so forth. So it's just one of the things that you learn as you progress. Basically, it's one of those things. It's just, as a beginner artist, like it's one of those like, oh, I wish I did that better again. But again, it's a learning process. Each time you make a new piece of artwork, you sort of gain new knowledge, and you sort of improve as you move on. So each piece I make, I think I am improving, and like every now and then I try to intersperse like a new quick tutorial in between here and there, to brush up my skills and improve as I move along. I'm currently doing a new tutorial at the moment. I'm doing the CG Booster car tutorial, which is one of the more advanced ones, where you model a car, a low poly car, and then you at the end of it you're supposed to have like a 3D animated scene where the flying car is going through the Grand Canyon or whatever, and like it looks really good. I haven't got to that point yet. I've modelled the car, but I haven't got to the animation part yet, so I will show my finished results once it's finished. Hopefully if I get to the end, hopefully without failing. I'm still very worried that's going to happen, but I will push through with that, I suppose. So we'll take it from there. And so while I'm working on that, I probably won't have a chance to work on other MLP artwork for the time being, so I've sort of paused it for now. I do need to update the podcast title, Carl. I'll try and do that at some point. I don't know what I'm going to swap it with. I'm probably going to redo it with another Fluttershy piece, perhaps. But again, I haven't really decided what I'm going to do with that yet. It's still in the works, as I say. It's sort of, again, like as with the podcast itself, it's mothballed because I just didn't have time, and like I did this thing way too early. I didn't have enough experience to relay to other people, to you guys, really. Like I started it too early. I should have like waited a bit longer and maybe got a few more people interested, like guests on board and stuff. But I'm working on that. I'll try, if hopefully this podcast will entice more people and more guests to come onto the show and talk about their experiences of making 3D artwork and what have you. I think I've covered everything I want to cover in this podcast. I don't want to make it too long. It's a nice little bite-sized little thing. Well, I'd call it bite-sized, but it's not too long, not too short. So I think I will cut it there. Thank you so much for listening to me. Again, you can follow me on my usual places. Follow me on Twitter. It's CitizenWolf_3D. I've changed my Twitter handle to make it more generalised, not just about MLP stuff. You can also find me on Derpaburu, my artwork, on DeviantArt, and on Fur Affinity as well. Those are three main sites you can follow me on, but I'm most active on DeviantArt and Twitter. So if you're at all interested in coming on the show, or any questions you want to ask me in like future episodes or what have you, do let me know. Send me some DMs, send me some comments, and I will see you guys next time. Thank you so much for listening. Take care.